So there's a lot that goes into being prepared for winter running. I don't know if your shock was temperature related or more so like mindset, but in regards to gear, I always find that overdressing, you can unzip your jacket, you can take it off, but overdressing, knowing that you have plenty to wear and you're not going to be cold, that's good for motivation. It helps get you out the door. And always keep in mind that it's always worse out there in your head while you're in your house than it actually is out there. And once you get going, motivation is just having empathy with your future self. And you know that once you get going, 2 minutes into the run, after the run is over, you're going to be glad you did. And so keep that in mind. Make decisions not for how you currently feel, but how you're going to feel. And like I said, proper gear is a great way to help that motivation at the same time. So running on the treadmill can be more difficult, a higher level of perceived exertion for a few reasons. Number one is that when you're running on the treadmill, you're stationary, so is everything else. So you don't have things moving by you. So that can increase your level of perceived exertion. Also, depending on the treadmill, maybe it has never been calibrated. So who knows, like you might be running at a different speed than the treadmill says you are. So take that for what it's worth. Treadmill running can be easier than outdoor running potentially, because if you have people around you on other machines, that might actually decrease your level of perceived exertion. So with my runners that I coach, I say run by heart rate, but really just ignore pace. Okay, so marathon shorts, I'm not sure about availability in the UK, but my go-to option has always been BOA. That's BOA. I think it stands for Born in America. I'm not sure, but they are excellent split shorts. Also, my number 2 option, which may replace my number 1 option, BOA, is from Janji, it's Janji, Janji, and I'll link you to a comparison I did of their split shorts versus their half tights. They have other lengths as well. But half tights, if it's not a hot day, like if I do Boston next spring, I might be in the half tights. They are nice. All those side pockets are really handy. So check out that video. But BOA or Janji would be my 2 go-to options. So some really quick tips on running hills during races. I recall this is one of my favorite research papers I've ever read about, and I can't find it. I wish I would have saved it. And it was that I think the researchers observed runners either during a race or a time trial, I can't remember. But what they found was that those who slowed down going up an incline were able to preserve their stamina at the top for the decline. So rather than trying to maintain speed going up and expire at the top. So I tell my runners during races, slow down going up the hills, let people pass you, preserve your stamina, and you'll get to the top, able to accelerate on the way down, and overall, over the net distance, you'll be in a positive. So, when it comes to training plan, like that's a very small thing a coach does for a runner. Selecting your own or writing your own might not be quite as good as a coach prescribing you one, but like something from Hal Higdon or one you write yourself is probably okay. Most of what a coach does is, I hold my runners accountable, pushing them when needed, holding them back many times, helping them select appropriate strength and mobility work, and making sure they get it done. Talking about gear and nutrition and all this, optimizing your sleep, stuff like that. So, if that sounds like something that you'd be interested in, check out my website and, like the 1 month intensive together, and then a training plan after that is pretty affordable, $300 USD. So how much treadmill running is maybe too much for winter or for marathon prep? And, the answer is usually it depends. But last winter, or was it 2 winters ago, was my first winter here in South Dakota without a treadmill. And it was awesome. I loved it. So, I will say that I'd never tell my runners that I coach to not run on the treadmill. It is often easier mentally to get those miles in on the treadmill, especially in hot conditions. If it's like for my summer runners in Arizona, Texas, yeah, treadmill it as often as you need to. For me in the winter, on the other hand, like I can dress for winter running and I'm happy without a treadmill. So whatever you need to do to get those miles in, that's what you got to do. Okay, so if you're feeling run down, two things to consider are, number one, your training load. Are you running too hard, too much, too often? Number two, your nutrition intake. Are you eating enough food, enough calories to actually fuel what you're doing? And so a literature review came out in November 2021 that looked at overtraining syndrome and relative energy deficiency in sport, REDS. And a big conclusion was a major part of the problem is not so much like overtraining, but under recovery and under fueling. And when I have runners that I work with, two of the major things I do are help them dial in their easy running, their rest days to make sure they're not under recovering, and also often making sure they're eating enough food and fuel. Hey, Coach Kyle and Banjo here. When it comes to getting over plantar fasciitis, number one thing is stop running or drastically reduce your running volume, frequency, to give that area, time and opportunity to heal. Also there are a lot of good stretches that you can do, specifically the one where you stretch you dorsiflex the foot, bring that all the toes up, push them, give them a little push with your hands. He wants the window down. It's cold out, bud. Also, a night splint or a Strasbourg sock can be a good option. Also, going into shoes with a slightly lower drop, so your Achilles isn't that rear of your foot isn't quite so lengthened, could help as well. Strength work, massage gunning with a golf ball could all help too. Okay, so when it comes to being safe on ice, a couple things to try are you can put screws, like just small screws, into the outsole of your shoes. Put it under your big toe, a couple under the pad of your foot, maybe one or two behind the heel. That can add a little bit of good traction, but those types of little spikes or screws, you can still run on pavement with them, not like yak tracks. You can't run on normal pavement when you have yak tracks strapped to your shoes. Also, a good light to illuminate the path. Like I have a 1,000 lumen headlamp, and it is the best. And also, I know that every time I have fallen, I've either been running fast and or not paying attention to where my feet are going to land. So just a heads up with that 220 minus your age for your max heart rate. If you were to talk to any running coach like myself, personal trainer, any fitness related professional, 9 out of 10 of them will tell you to totally ignore that 220 minus your age formula to calculate max heart rate. It's notoriously inaccurate. So if your heart rate is, your max heart rate is higher or lower than that, go with that number. With myself, with my clients, we might do a max heart rate test. We might do like a 1 mile, 2K, 5K time trial or a race to get a fitness benchmark and use that. So ignore that formula and go with your own personalized numbers. Yeah, like you said, accountability. Oh, Banjo brought me a toy. I can't get it. So accountability is super important with having a coach, and I always tell my new clients that as their coach, my number one job is to get them to where they want to be uninjured, because if they get hurt, I'm out of a job. And my ego is not related to them hitting 40 miles per week or doing this or that. My ego is getting them to their ultimate goal and enjoying the process. And that is being an uninjured runner and not pushing too hard or underdoing the recovery, missing out on strength work. My ego is my runners doing their strength work. And so if this sounds like something you'd be interested in, check out my website for some options. I have some pretty affordable options and some pretty intensive options. So I wanted to show you a quick kind of hack or a cue that I like to use for my running posture. And I like to imagine that when I'm running, there's a rope attached right here and to like a tree or a telephone pole up there, and somebody's like pulling this rope. He's standing on top of the telephone pole, and he's pulling the rope attached to my chest like up and forward. So that helps my posture go from like this to like this. It's just a slight change, and it helps my forward lean a little bit, just a slight tiny forward lean from the ankles, and my posture, my core, my trunk come up just a little bit. So try that visualization, that cue next time you're out running, and see if it helps your posture. So I think that in the winter especially, whatever you can do to avoid running in the evening, unless it's for a group run, should be done, because that gives your brain all day to think about how cold or windy it is outside. It gives excuses, obligations, time to pop up and get in the way of that evening run. In the morning, you do it, great way to start your day, and it's done, and that feels awesome. And typically, it might be coldest in the morning, but I find that the wind is usually reduced in the morning. So I'd rather take a slightly colder run but less wind over a warmer run with more wind. But afternoon, generally more sunny, might be a higher temp, but like I said, a little more wind. But being out in the sun is actually, might be a little better for your mood and your overall energy. So morning, afternoon are my two go-tos.